As the Executive Director of the Retirement Living Council, what do you see as the role of the Property Council in the retirement sector?
The Property Council is a forum to allow dialogue between all the players that make a retirement village possible, and constructing and finding the money and finding government support for a retirement village is obviously a complex matter that requires understanding of all sorts of parties, from both government and the banking sector and equity providers and residents themselves, the general public, because there's often a lot of interest in any community to a new development. So the Property Council is there to try to make that dialogue happen.
How many villages are there in Australia, and how many residents approximately live in retirement villages?
There are almost 2,000 villages in Australia, and there's around 150,000 people who live in villages across the nation. So it's a really significant section of the over 65 population. It sort of amounts to 5 or 6% of the entire population over 65. And obviously with an ageing Australia, that total number is set to rise. So we're looking at a doubling of the population forecast by 2050 of the over 65 population.
Who are the major operators of retirement villages? What sort of people are they?
There's a real diversity of operators, Chris. So they start at one end of the spectrum with publicly listed companies, and some of those will have major recognition in households. So that's Stockland and Lendlease, Aveo, so a lot of those very big providers who own a lot of villages across the country in different locations. And then there's also not-for-profit providers from churches, the Catholics, Anglicare. There's a lot of church-run enterprises, and then there's also small villages that are owned by individual owner-operators, and then community-based operators like RSL. So there's a huge diversity in the retirement village field.
Can you explain to us where you see retirement villages fitting into the community?
Retirement villages fill a really important need in the Australian community, and that's a growing need, obviously, with the proportion of the population ageing. It's incredibly important that retirement villages offer a great array of services and also price points. So there's obviously a need for a lot more affordable housing that's designed for older people to live in, and retirement villages are built for purpose. So they're designed for people to live in them who might sometimes have reduced mobility, or who have a need for additional physical security features that a younger population doesn't need. So retirement villages really fill a great gap in the market.
Can you describe a typical retirement village?
They're usually beautiful facilities that have large gardens and design features that make it easy to live in without the stresses of some housing that's not designed for people with reduced mobility. So there's everything from emergency call buttons to features that make everyday living just a lot easier. Kitchens, for instance, are designed for people who need wider doorways to get in, and who need handles to be designed in such a way that arthritis or other conditions don't impair their ability to cook. So there's all sorts of features, and bathrooms are the same principles that allow people to get in and out easily, and that have panels that are removable from showers, and features that make for everyday living to be a lot easier.
And how does the funding model work?
I think there's a real underappreciation, Chris, of the value that retirement villages give to residents. So it's not just a place to live. It's you have obviously your unit, but there's also a lot of shared facilities that come at a fraction of the price than if you were paying for it as a private sole user. So a lot of retirement villages have shared facilities of one sort or another. So anything from a lawn bowls area through to gardens, which just about everyone enjoys. So there's all sorts of shared facilities that frankly, most people would struggle to pay for even a tenth of. And the benefit of the funding model for retirement villages is that there's a lot of value that you can defer until the end of your residency. So there's usually a fee up front that's just a fraction of the actual value of the services you're receiving through your tenure.
How would you summarise retirement villages as a solution as we age?
Older Australians need choice, like younger Australians. So that means that retirement villages, along with a lot of other options, are incredibly important, and retirement villages at a range of prices, and that's what the industry seeks to provide. So there's a lot of need for affordable housing. Most of us are living longer than was anticipated and longer than we have saved for, and for that reason it's important that there's retirement villages that can provide services economically, including shared facilities and all the stuff that we want to enjoy. I'm really proud to work for an industry that builds communities, and communities are important at whatever stage of life we're at, but for older people who we know often live in isolation, which breeds loneliness, it's critical that they have accommodation and services that are easily accessible. That means both affordable and available in areas where older people want to live.